The galaxy had long prided itself on its vast network of peace and prosperity. Empires built on millennia of progress, trade, and diplomacy dominated the stars. Each species, from the regal Cytheri to the cunning Talakor, had carved out their space in this well-ordered cosmos. Peaceful coexistence, while not without its challenges, had been the norm for centuries. Yet, all of that changed in a heartbeat. The anomaly appeared without warning. At first, it was nothing more than a faint blip on the deepest reaches of galactic sensors. An irregularity. A small group of scientists, tasked with monitoring the outermost regions of space, were the first to detect it. A massive, moving object, its size far beyond anything in recorded history. They ran the readings again, unsure of what they were seeing. The sensors screamed with confusion. The object didn't match any known patterns of ship construction or natural phenomenon. Then it blinked. Not in the visual sense, but in the way the mind processes the impossible. A sudden shift in the spatial fabric around it. The object, a colossal ship, its form both sleek and intimidating, had moved into known space, traversing vast distances in mere moments. And it wasn't alone. A fleet of smaller ships, dark and angular, followed closely behind. Panic swept across the galaxy's capitals. Within hours, every major galactic power had mobilized. Sensors and warships were dispatched, but the mysterious fleet remained elusive, flickering in and out of detection. The quiet terror was palpable. No one knew what they were facing. Then came the transmission. It arrived on every communication frequency. A single, simple message. We are humanity. Prepare for contact. The message echoed through every civilization, stirring confusion, fear, and intrigue. The term humanity was unfamiliar to most. Some species considered themselves experts in galactic history, with records stretching back eons, but there were no references to a species called humanity. The name was strange, the tone calm yet unmistakably authoritative. It was a message that carried a quiet weight, one that demanded attention. In the halls of the Cytheri Empire, the Emperor called an emergency council. The vast, insectoid species, known for their imperial might, was the first to respond, launching their fleets toward the coordinates of the unknown ship. We must show them our strength, the High General muttered, standing before a holographic display. We cannot risk letting this be a threat to our reign. The Talakor, ever pragmatic, took a different approach. No shots, no displays of force. Their leader, Vesari, ordered. We must observe first. This could be a new power, one we need to understand before reacting. The representatives of other star systems were just as divided. Some believed the humans were seeking diplomacy, while others feared they might be a prelude to a violent conquest. In the wake of this tension, the galaxy stood still, waiting for the next move from the mysterious ships. In the midst of it all, the human battleship, the Vanguard, continued its silent vigil, as if it were waiting for something, for someone to act. The galaxy watched, breath held, as the new players in the cosmic game made their entrance, powerful, inscrutable, and, for the moment, utterly silent. The galaxy, still reeling from the initial shock of the human fleet's sudden arrival, was plunged into uncertainty. The unknown nature of the humans' intentions fueled paranoia across the stars. No one had dared make a move yet, unsure of how to respond. Then, on the third day after the mysterious message, a new transmission arrived. This time, it wasn't just a message, but a demonstration. The broadcast was clear, direct, and chilling in its simplicity. It appeared simultaneously across every communication network, in every language, on every world. The human captain's voice, calm yet firm, echoed in the minds of every leader, from the elegant lords of the Tikali to the cold, calculating high consul of the Olzar Dominion. We are humanity. Prepare to negotiate. No threats, no demands. But the phrasing was unsettling. Negotiation, they said. Yet there had been no introduction, no signs of diplomacy, only the eerie silence of the human fleet watching from the edge of the galaxy. The leaders convened at the Galactic Council Station, a neutral meeting place built at the heart of the galaxy's most influential systems. Representatives from the major powers, Sithari, Talakor, Zethar Dominion, and the militaristic Arcthun Republic, gathered in tense silence. The council's central chamber, a massive vaulted hall, hummed with the tension of 1,000 voices on edge. "Prepare to negotiate," Emperor Vidral of the Sithari Empire growled, his long insectoid mandibles clacking. "This is no diplomatic gesture. This is a declaration of war." "No, it's a warning," countered Vesari, the Talakor leader. "We've seen this before, a new power making its first claim to the stars. But we must understand their motives before we react. To attack now would be reckless." "I agree," said Vonkor, the military commander of the Zethar Dominion. "But they've already shown power beyond anything we can match, a fleet that can hide in plain sight, disappear, and reappear at will. This is not something we can afford to ignore." Meanwhile, the human battleship, still lurking at the edge of known space, remained an enigma. Despite the calm words of their message, their actions, no matter how subtle, spoke volumes. That very same day, the Vanguard, the lead ship in the human fleet, performed a demonstration that left the galaxy speechless. It didn't move aggressively or fire its weapons. Instead, it launched a single probe toward an asteroid in the far reaches of space, just outside the Council Station's view. Seconds later, the probe detonated. The asteroid, which had been floating silently in space for eons, was turned to dust in an instant. A cloud of debris scattered outward, the shockwave traveling faster than any vessel in the galaxy could hope to match. It was a demonstration of power, but not brute force. It was precision. The asteroid hadn't been an obstacle. It was a message. We can strike anywhere, and we can do it without warning. The council chamber erupted into chaos. A few leaders whispered in disbelief, others shouted in anger, while the rest remained silent, calculating their options. The broadcast flickered to life once more, the calm voice of the human captain returning. "We have no desire for war, but make no mistake, our purpose here is non-negotiable. Humanity seeks peace, but we will defend ourselves and our interests with the full force of our will. You have been warned." There was no boast in the voice, no arrogance, just an ironclad certainty, as though they had already made their peace with whatever consequences would come. As the transmission ended, a chill swept through the council room. The message was clear, but its implications were terrifying. Humanity wasn't here to fight for domination, but they weren't afraid to fight, and no one knew what they would do next. The galaxy's great powers were now at a crossroads. Would they choose diplomacy, or would they prepare for the unthinkable? The council chamber was a cacophony of heated debates as the galaxy's leaders struggled to process the events unfolding before them. The warning from the human fleet had sent shockwaves across the stars. Now, with the human battleship's demonstration still fresh in their minds, the galaxy's most powerful representatives found themselves standing at the precipice of a new era. Within hours of the chilling broadcast, a delegation was arranged. The leaders agreed, albeit reluctantly, to meet with the humans. No one wanted to appear weak, but the sheer scope of their power left them little choice. A meeting was set to take place at the Galactic Council Station, the neutral zone where previous galactic crises had been resolved, and where they would now attempt to make contact with the humans. The Sithari fleet arrived first, their ships gleaming with military precision, followed by the Talakor, their sleek, bioluminescent vessels trailing silently behind. The station's massive docking bay was filled with an almost uncomfortable air of anticipation. Every movement, every whisper seemed amplified as the leaders gathered, all wary of what might come next. On the other side of the vast hall, the human representative finally arrived, their presence seemingly smaller than the massive warship that had sparked the galaxy's panic. The human envoy was not an officer of war, but a commander, someone who would speak for all of humanity. Dressed in simple military garb, The commander's posture was relaxed, unyielding yet composed. No heavy armor, no weapons on display, just a simple communicator device and a presence that filled the room more than any fleet of ships ever could. "Are you ready to discuss the future of the galaxy?" the human captain asked, their voice calm, unwavering. The way they spoke, with quiet authority, sent a ripple through the assembly. Every leader in the room was taken aback by the simplicity of the question. Emperor Vidral was the first to speak, his mandibles clacking in irritation. "We are ready to discuss, but let me be clear. You have arrived uninvited. You demonstrate power beyond our understanding. Yet your message carries no sense of benevolence. What do you want from us?" The human commander's eyes remained steady, and they spoke in the same even tone. "We seek nothing but peace. However, we have learned that peace cannot be sustained in a universe where survival is a constant struggle. We come to offer you a choice." Vasari, the Talakor representative, narrowed his glowing eyes. "A choice?" he asked, voice laced with suspicion. "And what choice is that?" The human commander paused, and for the first time, a slight flicker of emotion passed across their expression, perhaps a hint of regret. "We have no wish to conquer your worlds. We've learned the hard way that conquest leads to endless war, and eventually, extinction. Our choice is simple. You can join us in building a future where cooperation leads the way, or we can walk away and leave you to your own devices. But know this, our survival depends on working together. If you choose war, we will fight to the end." The room fell silent. The words of the human captain hung in the air like a heavy fog. This wasn't a typical negotiation. It wasn't a request, nor an ultimatum. It was a stark truth that came from someone who had seen the horrors of war and the fragility of life. "What are you really asking?" Emperor Vidral's voice was laced with disdain. "Are you demanding that we kneel before you? Subjugate ourselves?" "No," the commander replied, a hint of firmness creeping into their tone. "We are offering an alliance, not servitude. But we will not be slaves to fear, and we will not bend to threats. The galaxy is vast, and its future is yet to be written. You can choose to stand with us as equals or against us as enemies. Either way, humanity will survive." The Sithari Emperor sneered, but there was uncertainty behind his eyes. He knew that this was no idle threat. The galaxy had never seen a species that spoke with such calm conviction, a species that had survived against the odds, one that could annihilate a fleet with a thought if it wished. For the first time in history, the galaxy's greatest powers were faced with an offer they couldn't ignore. The room was heavy with unspoken questions. What does humanity truly want? Are they here to protect us, or to bury us? The silence stretched on, and all eyes turned to the human captain, waiting for the next move. The tension in the council room was palpable as the human commander's words lingered in the air. While some leaders were still reeling from the directness of the human proposition, others were considering the possibility of peace, though each weighed it against the potential risk. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't here to negotiate on their knees. They had come with the intention of standing tall. The question was, would the galaxy dare to challenge them? Then, as if to answer that question, the human commander made a proposal. "We invite you to witness a demonstration of our capabilities." A murmur of surprise spread through the room. A demonstration. The galaxy's leaders had seen military shows of strength before, grand parades of fleets that boasted terrifying weaponry. But the human request was different. There was no show of force, no prelude of grand speeches, just an invitation to watch. "I think it's time you understand the kind of force you're dealing with," the human commander added, a cold finality in their voice. The leaders agreed, though none knew what to expect. The atmosphere at the Galactic Council station shifted as the alien envoys prepared to witness the demonstration. Not far from the station, the Vanguard, the human flagship, hung in space like a dark sentinel, its silhouette imposing against the void. As soon as the signal was given, the giant warship moved forward, gliding toward a distant asteroid field that sat in the farthest corner of the system. The council leaders watched from their observation decks, their faces bathed in the pale light of the distant stars. No one spoke as the Vanguard drew closer to the field. It was as if the ship itself were waiting for something. Then, without warning, the human vessel fired. The beam from the Vanguard's weapon didn't flash or explode. There was no bright light, no violent eruption. Instead, it was precise, calculated. A long, steady laser that pierced the vast emptiness of space and struck the center of the asteroid field. A small, unassuming asteroid, roughly the size of a city block, was its target. For a moment, nothing happened. The asteroid sat suspended in space, seemingly unaffected. The leaders of the galaxy exchanged glances, wondering if this was some kind of elaborate trick. And then the asteroid exploded. But it wasn't the chaotic eruption of a typical asteroid being struck by a weapon. No, the asteroid shattered in a perfect arc, its mass disintegrating into fine dust. The debris formed a symmetrical cloud, spreading evenly outward, leaving no trace of the original rock. The destruction was so controlled, so precise, that the viewers were left stunned into silence. That was a single shot. The human commander's voice came through the speakers, calm and emotionless. It's not the power of a weapon that determines its effectiveness. It's the precision with which it's used. We call this a strike, not a blast. There is no need for waste when you can achieve perfection. The implications were immediate. This wasn't a weapon designed for indiscriminate destruction. It was surgical. The Vanguard didn't need to decimate entire fleets or entire cities. It could cripple an enemy with a single calculated blow, one that left no room for retaliation, no room for survival. The galaxy's representatives were speechless. The Sithari, known for their ruthless efficiency in warfare, were taken aback by the level of sophistication. The Talakor, who prided themselves on stealth and ambush tactics, were forced to reconsider their strategies. Even the Olzar Dominion, who had maintained an aura of invulnerability through sheer technological superiority, watched the demonstration in stunned silence. "Now you understand," the human commander continued. "We fight not for domination, but for survival. This is what you would face, should you choose war." There was no boasting in the commander's voice, only cold truth. The demonstration had not been a flexing of muscles, but a subtle warning. We are not to be underestimated. The silence that followed was thicker than any weapon. The galaxy's leaders knew, deep down, that this wasn't a mere show of power. This was a promise, one that was both chilling and undeniable. Now, the human commander said softly, "The choice is yours. Join us, or face the consequences." The demonstration hung in the air like a heavy fog, its impact settling over the galaxy's leaders. The asteroid had been reduced to dust, a precise strike with no room for error, and the calm demeanor of the human commander only added weight to the moment. No one spoke for a long time as they processed what they had just witnessed, each species faced with the undeniable truth that humanity was no ordinary power. The silence stretched on, until finally it was broken by Vesari, the Talakor leader. His voice, usually smooth and deliberate, was now tinged with a rare note of uncertainty. "This power, this is beyond anything we've encountered, but we are not a people to bend easily. Are we to simply accept their terms because they have demonstrated strength?" "Not strength," came the human commander's voice again, piercing through the tense atmosphere. "Precision. Control. Our strength lies in our ability to choose when and how to act, not in the destruction we leave behind. If you reject us, we will fight, but we won't waste lives." A subtle yet visible ripple ran through the room. The arrogance that had initially defined the galaxy's leaders in their dealings with newcomers had been shaken. This wasn't a threat made in anger or impatience. The humans were speaking from a place of logic, of experience. They were not the warmongers the galaxy's leaders feared. They were survivors, and their willingness to go to war was not born from the need to conquer, but from necessity. Emperor Vidral, who had remained silent throughout the demonstration, finally spoke, his mandibles clicking with annoyance, but tinged with thoughtfulness. Survival. So that is your argument. And yet, how are we to trust that you will not use your precision to crush us when you deem it necessary? The human commander met the Emperor's gaze. You have seen our methods. We fight only when we must, and only with exacting force. But trust is a two-way street. You must also decide if you can work alongside us, not as rulers, but as equals. The Zethar representative, a calculating mind known for his pragmatism, was the next to speak. You would have us accept your superiority in exchange for cooperation. There is no guarantee of peace. How can we be certain that you do not seek to quietly replace us? The human commander took a breath, their expression still calm but resolute. I understand your hesitation, but I am offering you a choice that humanity has earned through the trials of war. The choice is simple. Stand together and create something better, or refuse and face the consequences of that refusal. Our fleets are vast, and our weapons precise, but we would rather stand beside you than against you. The room was divided. Some species, like the Sithari, saw the humans as a direct threat to their empire and reacted with hostility, but others, like the Talakor and the Zethar, considered the possibility of cooperation, driven by the realization that humanity's strength was unlike any they had ever faced. The question of trust, however, loomed large. In the quiet spaces between their words, they all knew that this meeting was not merely a discussion. It was a moment of reckoning. Emperor Vidral rose slowly from his seat, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the room. We will take this to our people. There is much to consider. His tone was not dismissive, but it carried the weight of finality. The galaxy will decide. And with that, the council meeting ended. The human commander stood still, unflinching, as the leaders of the galaxy turned their attention inward, pondering their next steps. The demonstration had proven a point, but it was the decision that followed that would change the course of history. Humanity had shown that they were not just conquerors. They were survivors, capable of overwhelming force, yes, but also of thoughtful, deliberate action. Now, the galaxy faced a choice: accept humanity's offer of cooperation, or reject it and face the inevitable fallout. The council room had emptied, leaving behind an uneasy silence that settled over the galaxy's leaders. Each delegation returned to their respective worlds, the weight of the decision pressing down upon them. They needed time to deliberate, time to argue, to plot, and perhaps to plan for what would come if they rejected the human offer. But while the leaders of the galaxy debated in the shadows, the human fleet remained in position, a silent reminder of the ultimatum they had delivered. They had made their case. Now, it was up to the galaxy's powers to respond. Unbeknownst to most, a secret faction was already moving in the shadows. Not all of the galaxy's leaders had embraced the human offer. Whispers of rebellion had begun to circulate. Some factions, particularly those who had always relied on military might and empire building, saw the humans as an existential threat to their dominance. They could not, and would not, allow a new power to dictate the future. The Sithari Empire, long the unchallenged ruler of vast swaths of the galaxy, was the first to take decisive action. Emperor Vidral, despite his earlier hesitation, had made up his mind. He had no intention of bowing to any species, human or otherwise. The message was clear. Their empire had ruled for millennia, and no upstart species, no matter how powerful, would be allowed to rewrite the rules. In secret, the Sithari began mobilizing their fleets, gathering weapons of unimaginable power. They sent covered emissaries to the Talakor, the Zethar, and other factions who had been wary of the human presence. There were offers, promises of power, and, in some cases, threats of retaliation if the human fleet wasn't stopped. The Talakor, always the pragmatists, remained divided. Vesari, their leader, had been impressed by humanity's precision and clarity, but the Talakor were no strangers to the art of betrayal. They knew how to play the long game, and in their hearts, many feared what might happen if they sided with the humans. The temptation of Sithari power was too great for some, and soon enough, a faction within the Talakor began to quietly plot against the humans as well. The Zethar Dominion, too, was tempted by the promises of power. While the Zethar leader, Vonkor, had publicly entertained the possibility of alliance, his shadowed allies in the military had begun to make moves behind closed doors. Some of the Zethar elites saw humanity's offer as a weakness, an opportunity to carve out a new order in the galaxy. If the humans could be taken down, they reasoned, they could position themselves as the new power players. As the traitorous factions gathered, the spark of rebellion grew. A shadow fleet, hidden in the farthest reaches of known space, began to form. A coalition of forces that would unite in opposition to humanity's quiet rule. The message was clear. The galaxy would not bend to humanity's will. But what the traitors did not anticipate was the speed and reach of the human fleet. As they prepared to strike, the humans had already intercepted their communications. The vast, silent ships of humanity's fleet, ships capable of disappearing and reappearing with terrifying precision, had tracked the conspirators' every move. The trap had been set. 1 week after the council meeting, as the factions of betrayal prepared their fleets, a single broadcast pierced through every channel, every frequency across the galaxy. The message was simple, yet final. We know what you are planning. We will not let you destroy what we have built together. This is your last warning. Surrender now or face the consequences. The galaxy's powers recoiled. They had underestimated humanity's intelligence, their vigilance. The human fleet had been watching them all along, waiting for the first move. Now the galaxy faced an impossible choice. Those who had sided with the betrayers could not hide their actions. The humans were aware. War was no longer a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And the first move had already been made. The message from the human fleet reverberated across the galaxy like a clap of thunder, shaking the foundations of power. We know what you are planning. The transmission had said, its cold precision sending chills through the hearts of those who had fought their conspiracies hidden. The galaxy's leaders, already on edge, were now plunged into a state of fear and confusion. They had been caught in the act of betraying the very species they had once hoped to subdue. But as the days passed, it became clear that humanity was not bluffing. The vast fleets of the traitor factions, Sithari, Talakor, and Zethar, had been preparing to strike, gathering in the shadows, ready to unleash their warships in a calculated attempt to crush the humans before they could establish their presence. But now it was they who had been caught in a trap of their own making. The Vanguard, humanity's flagship, remained at the center of the storm, its silent and imposing form cutting through space like an unstoppable force. Humanity's fleet was not large, but it was swift and precise. Their ships had the ability to slip in and out of view, like predators in the dark, striking when least expected. The galaxy's traitors had underestimated the humans' intelligence, their ability to anticipate movements long before the enemy made them. Within a matter of days, the first strike came. The Sithari fleet, massed near the edge of the galaxy, poised for their assault, found themselves ambushed by a fleet of human warships that materialized from the void. The humans moved with terrifying efficiency. There was no overwhelming bombardment, no flashy displays of raw power. Instead, the Vanguard and its fleet began picking apart the Sithari ships one by one. Precision weapons decimated their shields, while smaller craft swept in to disable engines, leaving entire warships helpless in the cold vacuum of space. The Sithari reacted with the brutal efficiency they were known for, but it was clear they were outmatched. Despite their superior numbers, they could not match the human fleet's speed or precision. The battle was over in hours. The Sithari fleet, once considered the pinnacle of military might, was shattered, leaving nothing but scattered wreckage and crippled ships. While the Sithari burned, the Talakor, who had hesitated to fully commit to betrayal, watched from the sidelines. Their ships remained cloaked, hidden in the debris of the conflict. But it wasn't long before the humans turned their attention to them. The Talcor's stealth and subterfuge had been one of their greatest assets, but the human fleet had already adapted. The Vanguard deployed specialized scanners, designed to detect even the smallest hint of cloaked vessels. One by one, the Talcor ships were revealed, and with surgical precision, they too were disabled. Finally, the Zephyr fleet, still undecided but sympathetic to the rebellion, prepared to make their move. Yet it was already too late. The human fleet had infiltrated their communications, intercepting encrypted messages and monitoring their movements. The moment the Zephyr ships entered formation, the humans struck. It was swift. It was overwhelming. The Zephyr were routed before they even had a chance to engage in full combat. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity's response unfolded. The rebellion had been crushed before it could truly take root. The humans, far from the brute conquerors the galaxy had feared, had demonstrated something far more terrifying: a flawless understanding of their enemies and an ability to strike when the galaxy least expected it. On the shattered remnants of the battlefield, with the traitor fleets in disarray, the human commander broadcasted a final message across all channels. This was your last warning. We gave you a choice, peace or war. You chose war, but we will not destroy you. Yet, you still have a chance to join us, to rebuild. But know this, you are on the verge of extinction, and the only path forward is unity. Your time is running out. The message rang in the minds of the galaxy's leaders, the threat undeniable. The humans had shown their hand. And it was not just a matter of power, but of will. They had broken the rebellion with precision. But more importantly, they had exposed the galaxy's fragile alliances and shattered the illusion of invulnerability. Now, the galaxy's leaders were faced with the unthinkable. Their time to decide was slipping away, and humanity's demand for cooperation would soon leave them with only one option: to unite or be crushed under the weight of a power they had underestimated. The galaxy had never been so still. In the wake of humanity's swift retribution, the remaining factions of the galaxy had been left reeling. The once mighty Sithari, their fleets shattered, their emperor humiliated, now found themselves scurrying for survival, while the Talcor and Zephyr, whose own fleets had been broken, tried desperately to regroup. It was a humiliation unlike any other in the galaxy's history. No power had ever so thoroughly dismantled the established order with such precision. For days, the galaxy's communication channels had been flooded with debates, accusations, and frantic messages. The leaders of the various factions who had once been sure of their superiority now faced a sobering truth. Humanity was not the threat they had imagined. It was the solution they had overlooked. The human fleet, having dismantled the rebellion with ease, had set up a temporary blockade around the galaxy's core. Every ship, every installation, was now under humanity's watchful eye. The message had been sent and received. We are in charge now. On the council station, the surviving leaders of the galaxy's most powerful factions were once again summoned to discuss the future. The council chambers were quieter now, no longer filled with the arrogant chatter of warlords, but instead with the strained murmurs of those who had come to face their fate. The once proud and defiant Emperor Vidral was absent, his fate uncertain. Rumors suggested he had been taken into custody, while others whispered that he was hiding in some forgotten corner of the galaxy, licking his wounds. In the center of the chamber, standing with quiet authority, was the human commander who had led the strikes. They looked more like a figurehead than a conqueror, their gaze unwavering as they addressed the assembly of galactic leaders. "You have seen our strength," the commander said, their voice soft, yet commanding. "You have felt the weight of our actions. Now, you must decide. We are offering you not just survival, but opportunity. This galaxy can thrive under the principles we fought for: unity, precision, and the survival of all species. But only if you choose to stand with us." Vesari, the Talcor leader, was the first to speak, his voice careful but resigned. "And if we do not stand with you, what becomes of those who refuse your terms?" The human commander's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "We have no desire to see anyone wiped from existence, but the time for games is over. You have two choices: cooperate and be part of the future we are building, or remain in opposition and face the consequences. We are not invincible, but we are capable of surviving. Those who defy us will be eliminated, swiftly, precisely." Zethar Vonkor, the remaining representative of the Zethar Dominion, looked as if he were weighing the decision carefully. "You ask for cooperation, but in reality, you demand submission." The human commander shook their head slowly. "No, we ask for partnership. There will be no rulers, no subjugation. What we offer is equality in the galaxy's new order. The same terms for everyone. Work together, or be left behind." The room was silent for a long moment, each leader caught in the impossible decision before them. For centuries, they had ruled by force, by treachery, by the strength of their fleets. But now, they faced a power that asked only for cooperation, not because it was weak, but because it was strong enough to stand on its own without the need for domination. One by one, the leaders began to shift in their seats, exchanging looks, whispering among themselves. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Viserys stood, his glowing eyes meeting the human commander's. "We accept your terms, but know this, human, we do not do so out of fear, but out of respect. You have shown us a future we had not thought possible." The human commander nodded, a small but genuine smile breaking through their stern demeanor. "Good. Together, we can rebuild this galaxy. Not as empires, not as conquerors, but as equals. We are stronger together than apart." The Talakor leader was followed by Vonkor, the Zethar, who also bowed his head, albeit with more reluctance. "We will join you, but this alliance will be tested." "We understand," the human commander replied. "Every partnership is tested, but we will face those tests together. That is the price of survival." And so, the new order was forged, not through domination, not through submission, but through the hard-earned trust that came from an undeniable truth. Humanity had proven itself capable of surviving when others would have fallen. And now they were offering that same chance to the galaxy's other species. The long, turbulent era of endless wars, empires, and betrayals had come to an end. The galaxy, once fractured and filled with strife, began its slow march toward unity. But even as peace seemed within reach, the human commander knew this was only the beginning. They had shown the galaxy their strength, but they were also offering a future. The road ahead would not be without conflict, but humanity had learned a long time ago that it was through unity that they could face whatever came next. And for the first time in millennia, the galaxy would have to learn how to walk that road together.